if we don't usher in a change in approach in healthcare to a weight health approach, we will have, and I remember thinking this in 2000, I'm like, we're going to have, an obesity rate that's over like 40, but, over 35%, right? And now it's like, above 40%, et cetera. The crazy thing that happened was the invention of the GLP-1 agonist now lets us have a conversation about and proves out that we are a weight health ecosystem designed with actually weight health hormones, which is why I ended up writing my book.
Welcome to the TBD Fit Podcast on Doctor Talks. I'm your host, Daniel Keeley, and I will be guiding you through this wellness journey in terms of optimizing health and longevity, where we unpack the science, the do's, the don'ts, and everything in between. Come join us. Look forward to seeing you inside. Your host, Daniel Keeley. I'm a functional medicine practitioner, and my goal is simple. I want to find individuals who are doing the best in their category, bring those conversations to light so we can have actionable takeaways to optimize health and longevity. We're diving into a powerful and timely topic today, weight health and hormone optimization, especially after the black box label that was recently lifted. With someone who has dedicated over 25 years to transforming how we think about nutrition, metabolism, and sustainable well-being. Joining me today is the brilliant Ashley Koff, who is a registered dietitian, the founder of the Better Nutrition Program, the nutrition course director for UC Irvine's Integrative Health Institute, and a faculty member at the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy. She teaches an integrative and functional nutrition approach to obesity and weight management, and she's the author of an upcoming book, Your Best Shot, which releases around the corner here, January 6, 2026, which we'll get into today's discussion. Recognized as one of CNN's top 100 health makers, featured in Style as Hollywood's leading dietitian, and honored as the Westin's Global Nutrition Ambassador, Ashley has helped redefine what it means to pursue health, not perfection, through a philosophy rooted in better, not perfect, which I absolutely love. Ashley, it's an honor to have you here today.
Thank you. I actually have my Better Not Perfect sweater on for you. So yeah, we're
You
going.
practice
We're
what
doing
you preach,
it. Yep.
which I admire.
There you go. Yeah. I was also cold.
So I
it
love
just
opening
happened.
each
Yeah.
discussion with
Yes.
allowing our community to understand who the guest is, the impetus or the catalyst as to kind of what led you to where you are today. I mean, I've heard you speak so many times, and each time your story is just so captivating. So if you want to dive deep into kind of a brief foray into who you are and what led you to do what you're doing now.
Sure. Well, it goes all the way back. Probably not in utero, but like shortly thereafter. I was I show pictures sometimes where I have like Shirley Temple and Spanky from the Little Rascals. And I was like, I think I was, a mix of the two. I had the big curly hair and big personality. And, I love to just kind of lead with that energy. And, it started off, I think I was a very happy child. And I say it started off there because I also had a belly, and my belly was when I was younger, it was like, you're cute, you're chubby, like who does, cute curly hair, etc. But then something sort of shifts, around at that point in time, I would say in society, like maybe more about around your preteen years. And I became, teased for being a fat kid, and it was really like, it was tough. I think I developed a pretty thick skin of being like fun and smart and like trying all the things. And I was fortunate to be good at a lot of things. But, I had this constant reminder from society that I wasn't good, like that there wasn't, this was an issue. And what was really interesting was I was on a parallel path that whole time where the medical world told me I was healthy. Like I was the healthy one in my family. I was, never, it was like, oh, Ashley's healthy. She just needs to eat less. Like she's just, gaining weight and she needs to eat less. I have to say like a huge acknowledgement to my parents because they didn't treat me any differently. Had two brothers. I was never treated differently, like, of what I could and couldn't do on that part. But I also wasn't treated, they didn't see me as having a problem on that part, but I saw it. And what's interesting underlying all of that was I was also on antibiotics from day one. I was ear infections and throat infections. And it got to the point where I was on them prophylactically. Like I was given them because I had ruined too many family vacations with trying to find an emergency room because I had a strep throat or an ear infection. So, that was sort of preventive medicine at that point. And, when society tells you you don't have a problem, but also tells you you do have a problem, and then especially when it's adults and when it's healthcare and things like that, you own that part of you. So I really had this like sort of parallel, sort of two sides of my being. And somewhere along the lines, I started watching a TV show called Who's the Boss? And I fell in love with Angela Bauer, Judith Light. She was tall, blonde, skinny. She was nothing. Like there was literally not anything about me that was her. But I was like, that's who I'm going to be. She worked in advertising. I thought like even when she fought with her mom, she was like funny and like won some of the arguments, so they had a great dynamic. And there was like hunky Tony Danza who was like at home doing everything, like, taking care of the kid. Like I was like, this is great. Like, I want to be her. And so I tried things, I sun in my hair to like turn it, it turned orange instead of turning blonde. I tried straightening my hair, whatever, all of these other things, but I had this belly and the belly led me to at first try dieting. And, this was the diet era. So it was, Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig and like all of these different things. And then when I got to college, it got pretty unhealthy. It was my first exposure to eating disorders. And so people who were using laxatives, people who were not eating, people who were purging, people who were exercising, like all of their waking hours. And I tried all of those and none of those worked for my belly. And so then I like added to my list of where I'm a failure, like I'm a failure at eating disorders. And it kind of all came to a head in when I went to become Angela Bauer. I took a job working in advertising. I sold sugared cereals and told everybody they were really good for them. Best breakfast, complete breakfast, way to start your day. And I was miserable. I was having panic attacks. I had such bad digestive issues at that point that even when I ate, I was either would look like 9 months pregnant and be bloated, or I'd have to like run and find a restroom and sometimes not make it. Like my digestion was really bad. And again, doctors, everybody was like, that, there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you need a therapist. I went to therapy. That was great. Like all of these proactive things. So I basically I dove into food and I learned from Michio Kushi and some others about macrobiotics. And that got me, I was like, when we use the word clean today, my eating was so clean, and I gave up alcohol and I started doing yoga and I was hanging upside down next to this woman who I'd moved on from Angela Bauer. I thought this woman was like who I wanted to be. She had like fiery red hair, curly. So I was like leaning into that. She had no belly and she was like super strong. And I just thought so beautiful. And she told me how she had been unable to get any help for her issues. And she became a healer to, she was her own first patient. So I let her woo me and I went over to her house, paid her $300. It was a nasty apartment. Like, I think she was a hoarder, like, and she pricked my finger and took blood and stuck it under a Fisher Price microscope, looked at it. And, it was the first person who had ever asked me a question about like my life and especially my childhood. She was like, did this kind of all happen around 12 or 13? And I'm like, yes, and then she says like, well, and did it get worse? Like kind of like every, and I'm like, yes. Right. And then she's like, I know what's wrong. Like you have a worm. Like I see it in your blood. And she's like, this worm, like it's been there and it's now like it's growing and it's like, this is what, and it was so nice to like finally have something to blame because I had literally tried and blamed everything, like what I was eating, what I wasn't eating, what I was doing, like everything. And I'm like, it's gotta be this worm. And so she says to me like this poignant moment, she goes, do you want to kill the worm? And it was like, when you're in an exit row and they're like, we need an affirmative from you and you. And I was like, yes, I want to kill the worm. Like, yes, And she's like, okay, like you just need to drink 40 ounces of goat's milk for 7 days. And this was 1996, 1997. Like I'm in Manhattan. There's no Whole Foods. Like finding goat's milk was not like an easy, like I went to this random like Lower East Side, and I like health food store, that kind of thing. The guy's like, wait, you're buying out our goat's milk supply? And I was like, yeah, that kind of. So anyway, I did it. And on goat's milk, I had never felt better. She had told me it was the perfect food. So she's like, it's carbohydrate, protein, and fat. It's alkaline forming. So she's like, that's going to kill the worm, acid alkaline balance. You're going to see the worm pass in your poop. like all this stuff. And so I'm like, okay, I'm on this. And I will say, like, over the course of 7 days, it was like, how somebody like gets excited about Prolon these days. It's like my belly got flat, like it was like, oh my gosh, like I'm seeing all of these benefits. And I literally in my head was like, maybe I just need to eat goat's milk for the rest of my life. Like I was like, maybe like this is my thing, and I'm like, I got this. The unfortunate part was like when the cleanse ended, so did all of the benefits. And after about 4 days, I had regained the 10 pounds and then had gained 1 pound. And I also was back to like all of my belly issues and, et cetera, over the course of a week. And so I remember that 1 pound was like the difference for me. At the old time, like these weren't digital scales yet. So I was like kind of leaning and standing, but I was like, oh my God, I really have like now gained weight. Like this is, and it was just, it hit me at my core. And I at that moment, I was a broken heel. Like I just broke. This was my rock bottom. I still went to yoga. I'm in hot yoga. And I just am looking at myself and I was like, you know what? I think you're going about this all wrong. Like, go drink alcohol, go on with your life, like be a fat person. Like your belly isn't like such a big deal. Like people like you, like you're successful in your career, just like be done with this. And so I went to a bar and I ended up like telling the story and I'm doing tequila shots. It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I literally had left hot yoga. I was plastered. Like I'm hammered. And this guy who was sitting in the bar eating a burger, like not up at the bar with us, like drinking, he comes up to me and he's like listening, kind of laughing as a smirk. And he goes, did you ever take antibiotics? And I look at him and I was like, that is the craziest pickup line that I have, like literally. And I'm like, what? And I'm thinking now I'm like leaning into a career as a stand-up comedian because I'm like, I'm so funny. And I was like, I can be fat and like, this will be great, whatever. And I turned to him and I was like, yeah, I was like, I freebased them. And he goes, okay. And he's like, well, I think I can help you. And I was like, dude, I'm done being healed. Like, I don't know what of this story you caught, but like, nobody can fix me. This is wrong. Like, my life purpose was to be a fat person. Like, that's the way, like, I was like, it's not going to change. Anyway, I kept his card and I randomly, like, I think because he said insurance would pay for it and I was broke. I went and I was like, yeah, what do you got for me? And we spent about 30 minutes talking. He never asked me about my weight. He asked me about from antibiotics through to things like birth control and things like, I'd had really bad periods and like all of this. And he was like kind of connecting these dots, but I didn't see those dots connecting. And then he said to me, and I'm sharing this with everyone listening here because this is the magic. He said, it's not what you're eating or what you're not eating, but your body doesn't have what it needs to run better. And that moment broke me open. That moment liberated and put me on the path to fulfilling my life purpose. I realized that where medicine and where society had me was we were in this weight versus health or this weight or health approach. You either have a weight issue or you have health issues. And nobody was going to tell me that I had a weight health issue. And what I had identified at that moment in time, which I think first I thought was like, oh, thank God it's not my weight, it's actually my digestion. But as I became a practitioner, I was able to put it together for people and say, at the end of the day, what we need to realize is that our weight, what type of fat, where we allocate fat, how much fat we have, same with muscle, same with bone, is a key performance indicator of our overall health. So if your body is putting fat around organs or in organs or is, depositing excess amount of fat, it's a signal that your operating system isn't working better. And similarly, if you don't have enough muscle or you're struggling to build muscle or your bone is breaking down or, any of this, those are signals and they're a part of that. And for anyone who's ever been told, you just need to diet or you just need to exercise, you just need to do this over here out of context from your overall health and not had a full health assessment, that practitioner hasn't, or that, whoever's doing the telling to you hasn't looked at you and understood that the human body is a weight health ecosystem. So it's a long answer to a very specific story. That's what got me here. I really wanted to make sure that nobody ever does a goat's milk cleanse again. Like, I feel like it's disgusting. And, there were plenty of other things that I did and tried. But the other part of it is if we don't usher in a change in approach in healthcare to a weight health approach, we will have, and I remember thinking this in 2000, I'm like, we're going to have, an obesity rate that's over like 40, but, over 35%, right? And now it's like, above 40%, et cetera. The crazy thing that happened was the invention of the GLP-1 agonist now lets us have a conversation about and proves out that we are a weight health ecosystem designed with actually weight health hormones, which is why I ended up writing my book.
A lot to digest there. First, I'll start at the beginning where you would appreciate this. My oldest, she was a carbon copy to Shirley Temple. So it's identical. Kindred
I
kindred
love her.
souls.
I love her. Yes.
Second, how was the
Yes.
health of your mom? If
Yes.
this was kind of congenital in some respects.
Yeah, what's interesting is I think we've learned more about vaginal microbiome, digestive health. You ask about the health of my mom,
Oh,
I would ask
sure.
the same thing about my dad. When we look at that and we understand that piece as well. We are a family that, and I share this very openly in my book as well, have battled probably two sides of the coin on digestion, like one slow motility and one too fast, and that kind of thing. But I think digestion, we're very fortunate in that certain chronic diseases like cancer haven't been like our story, but digestive health has really been our story. So I think
I
it's great
stand
that you bring that
corrected,
up.
actually, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that because it's the better question was, how was the health of your parents? And it's interesting because my first fertility patient, actually, it was the father was an issue. And I'm proud to announce, I mean, they recently had a child, but so much is centered around the mom.
I love
And
it.
it doesn't mean that that's not accurate all
Mhm.
the time. Obviously, we're all toxic. The question at this point is just what degree and how well is our body working to be able to reduce that toxic burden and kind of push things out as intended naturally, which kind of segues now into this whole GLP-1 vitamin G GLP obsession. Let's
Yeah.
discuss maybe then the hormone trifecta. So GLP-1, PYY, cholecystokinin, kinine. How does all of this kind of play into what's happening now? Because a lot of this is released naturally, and what's happening obviously is we're doing it in unfortunately such high doses that it holds into the body, maintains in the body so much longer, and there's some adverse consequences that can appear. Not to say it's without positive effect, but again, talk to me about what's going on here.
Yeah, I think it's magical. I mean, I'm super excited because my first exposure to incretin hormones was not in medical school. It was not in any part of my training, like any of the, as a dietitian, I wasn't like, oh, learn about this and this is what regulates leptin and ghrelin, or this is what tells insulin and glucagon to go to work. But the fact of the matter is, when I saw a bariatric patient and that overnight switch, right, that literally something switched on for them, that was, how I learned about this. So for many of you are learning about medications that are called a GLP-1 and you're not learning about until right this moment, or maybe small moments before, that our body is designed with weight health hormones. Our body is designed with GLP-1, PYY, CCK, GIP, amylin, like oxymodulin. There's so many of them. But those four, it's really important to understand them because they regulate weight health. They do not regulate fat and cravings, which is what I think they've been minimized to be thinking about. But when something is regulating it, if it is suboptimally functioning, then that system will have impairment to it. And when you override something or you replace it, which is what we're doing with the medication, then there will also be components and of both optimization and also challenges and considerations. So those hormones are made of the lining of the digestive tract and also in the stomach lining as well through the digestive tract. So that's important to note because when I was taking my antibiotics regularly, I was destroying them. Like I was impairing their function / rendering them dysfunctional. So when I then went on and added birth control, when I drank copious amounts of alcohol to be a fun person because I was socially embarrassed, that also was impairing their function. So all of these different pieces are like key components for us to, be looking at. When we carry our trauma, we carry it in our vagus nerve, and our vagus nerve function is going to be important because that's where the signals are being sent and also received from. So there's a whole system in our body. I call it an ecosystem because it's all interdependent. So what happened was, is I was looking at this and I'm there in practice and I'm in Hollywood repairing people's weight health and all these through helping them with their digestion and their food, et cetera. Science had identified that a Gila monster the venom of a Gila monster has a hormone that is very similar. So we call it biosimilar to our own GLP. And that actually, starting in 2005, was able to launch a biosimilar hormone replacement. So it is also a peptide hormone. It is a chain of amino acids. And the difference, the dissimilarity is that it stays on for 24 hours for about 7 days a week. The first version stayed on for just 24 hours. So our own stay on for 2 to 5 minutes. So that is an exponential shift in the amount of time that it stays on. That's advantageous for a couple of reasons, and we'll talk about that. But we want to recognize that it also, when something stays on that much longer, to your point, it is going to do two different things. It's going to exacerbate any underlying challenges or create them, if there was anything dysfunctional in the system. But it's also going to override your own system. If you go in and you replace that and the receptor sites for a week don't have any reason to secrete that hormone, you're shifting the way that the body functions because you're circumventing that whole system. So when we learn about the agonist today, like what I love about the agonist is every single time a research study comes out, I'm like I think people are probably tired of me, but I'm not tired of doing it. Like every time a new study is released, especially like during obesity week, there was like new information. I was like, okay, double click on that because every study is showing us how the body works. And we are a society that has not understood that the body by design has a set of hormones that tells other hormones to go to work. And what they do when they're telling those other hormones to go to work is they're enabling ecosystem function. So we can talk about some of the pros and considerations, but to me, this is so exciting because we've been dealing with blood sugar issues around and focusing on insulin and glucagon. And we have been missing that there are a set of hormones that tell insulin and glucagon to go to work, right? So, that when you're missing, like, it's like trying to play dominoes, but not kicking down the first domino. It's no wonder all of these therapies have been suboptimal in terms of outcomes or have had additional consequences in the
Blood
ecosystem.
sugar dysregulation. Let's segue into that because that's kind of where you just prefaced. So to me, when we look at
Yeah.
healing our patients, I start with, well, first that you can only heal the speed of your nervous system. But beyond that, obviously, you said, what is the ecosystem? What is the internal terrain? What is the external terrain? Certainly both play a huge factor. When I look at healing, I look at it kind of in these phases. And to me, it starts with circulation, perfusion. Are you able to deliver oxygen to the periphery and centrally and nutrients? And then what does your glucose or your fuel delivery look like? I mean, not necessarily going deep into ketosis or anything like that, but just in general, what is your ability to optimize blood sugar regulation? Because if we look at metabolic disease, that to me is target number one. And then what happens, how that affects other
Yeah.
systemic issues. So when you mention hormones to regulate that, let's dive in deep into here how you think about those things.
Sure. And I'm so glad that you took it to the larger ecosystem. When somebody says, like, oh my gosh, look at this as it relates to Alzheimer's, you're like, no wonder, because if something helps optimize blood sugar regulation, it's optimizing brain health. So we have to, keep looking at the ecosystem from that standpoint. So we have insulin and glucagon, which the goal is to, when the body is working properly, we take in nutrients. Those nutrients get into the bloodstream. And one of the things that happens is the pancreas will deploy the hormone insulin to go pick up carbohydrate, sugar in the blood, and take it to cells and drop it off there. So sure, if we have too much sugar and we don't have enough insulin, that's going to be a problem. We may have delays where we may have that the actual insulin isn't getting deployed quickly enough or in a timely enough manner. And then we can also have issues at the reception point where the cell doesn't necessarily have what it needs. I always say that like insulin should come with the code, like the lock that lets the nutrients get into the cells. But if we don't have the right amount of chromium and other things, like that might not happen. So what's interesting is to now understand that these hormones, GLP-1, GIP in particular, they're regulating insulin and glucagon working in the opposite manner from insulin to liberate sugar and send it to the bloodstream. So it's actually driving that. That's the mechanism by which the pancreas gets a message that says, hey, you should deploy this insulin. So with things like insulin resistance or suboptimal insulin production and deployment, one of the things we have to look at is how is our GLP-1 and how is our GIP functioning? These are hormones that then are their sole job. They only go on for 2 to 5 minutes. Their job is to be like, let me just tell this other hormone to go to work, right? At the same time, it's also telling leptin and ghrelin how to work in the brain. And so that helps create this cycle where the brain also gets the message, I'm optimally resourced. I don't need to now ask for more, right? So it's the dual cycle that's going on. So one of the things I think it's so important in that space is to then understand that when we have suboptimal production or deployment, or there's a delay in GLP-1 and GIP getting to the receptor sites, then they're going to facilitate a delay in the ecosystem where then the insulin and the glucagon don't work in the manner that they're supposed to work. So, we've had other drugs before. We certainly have, by the way, insulin is a biosimilar or is a bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. So we have examples of this. So some people get insulin, but we have all these other classes of medications that have tried to address the problems of insufficient insulin throughout the body, like, that the resulting problems. But nothing before was actually saying, like, what if we actually helped insulin get the message to go to work more effectively? And that is by coming in and having GLP-1 be able to do its job better. And there's an argument that exists today, which is maybe they should stay on for longer than 2 to 5 minutes. Maybe our modern society and like maybe our evolution hasn't caught up. And so there were some medications that were on the market that actually tried to stop the enzyme that breaks down GLP-1, that breaks down your own hormone. And they were antagonizing, they were stopping that. But what we didn't see from those was the resulting reduction in cravings, tremendous improvement in blood sugar. And we also, some of these other pieces. So it does help you like think about, like, it really is about this particular hormone or this set of hormones and how they're able to work. Now, if you take a GLP-1 agonist, then what it is doing, it's an agonist. So it is doing the same thing as your body. Like, it is not working against it. It is working in the manner your body intended. But what it is doing is for 24 hours, for about 7 days, we know, like, declining impact, it starts off at its highest and declines. But over the course of those 7 days, it's sending out that message and telling insulin to go to work. That does have a downside to it. It means it puts you in a metabolically active or encouraging metabolic activity state. And so one of the considerations of the medication is, and especially the dosage, as you mentioned, is also seeing that things like heart rate variability, the stuff that's supposed to happen like when we're in a relaxed time period and a non-metabolically active time period, the space between those 2 to 5 minutes, and our eating cycles, that we're not seeing that degree of relaxation. We're seeing I'll see, downward trends in heart rate
which is
variability.
indicative of stress management to some degree, obviously nervous system health, going back to that. So is there
Hugely.
a time and a place for GLPs, or are you completely opposed?
Well, the title of my book, it says The Personalized System for Optimal Weight Health, GLP-1 shot or not. So I hope it infers I'm good with either. I think there is an absolute time and place. I think these medications, this particular type of medication is phenomenal. And the fact that we have it is addressing, it's kind of interesting that a prehistoric animal's venom, the Gila monster, is actually helping us to address one of our largest modern health issues, and that is metabolic dysfunction, or what I refer to as a weight health crisis. But I think the time and the place is person specific. The dose is going to be really important. And then the other piece is it is a tool in our weight health toolkit. It is not the solution. So in the medical community, especially like the obesity medicine and some others, would have you believe that this medication is the solution, right? And it doesn't. It does not make us weight healthy. It can be used as part of a personalized plan to make us be able to optimize our weight health on that part.
So in terms of stress and cortisol, I know when you mentioned, it'll drop HRV, which is kind of indicative of this more sympathetic driven state, which is more kind of in this deteriorating capacity. Again, going back to your initial story about your body's just not in a state that's conducive to healing or repair. How does that then, I mean,
Right.
obviously GLP and otherwise, how does that kind of tie into this whole discussion for you and metabolic health issues?
I love that. Yeah, and I want to. I'm a very curious person. I think that's what makes us great practitioners. I'm curious about how the body works. I'm curious about the human. So, for everyone that might be experiencing a reduction in heart rate variability, is using the medication, they may also be experiencing an improvement in their stress response because, for the first time in their life or in the time that they remember, they're not having obsessive thoughts about food, what they eat, what they don't eat. Maybe they're reducing their alcohol consumption. Maybe they're not overwhelming their digestive system because they're able to be satisfied with a better for their body portion. Maybe they're taking to exercising or they're increasing the intensity of their workouts, different things. And so it's not nothing about our body is black or white or, this space, but we do have to, we have to monitor the person. In my ideal world, which I never ever almost, especially in my patient world, exist in the ideal world, I would get to be working with someone, assessing this, optimizing digestive function, having clarity about where dysfunction might exist in the ecosystem, having a plan for that, having them start to implement some of that. And then we start at a low dose and then we see how it goes, like all of that. Usually I'm getting people who are sent to me either feeling like the agonist is not working for them any longer, like it started working and now it's not working, or they're at the highest dose and something still isn't working, or they're feeling like they have to come off of it because at the dose that they're at, they haven't had a bowel movement in a week, or there are just other, health factors. And so in that space, what we have to do is come back and unpack, like, what is your body telling us? And I think it will often reveal things about how other hormones are not working optimally. And I think this is an important one because a lot of people that I see are perimenopausal women who are using it, or men who are a little bit older. Like I would say the perimenopausal woman I might be seeing is anywhere from like 40 to 55. A lot of the men that I'm seeing that I'm going to reference now are maybe like just sort of on the edge of turning 50, or maybe have an underlying like an autoimmune disease, et cetera. But where testosterone has gone down, and where they're noticing signs of like I can't make muscle, or I'm gaining fat, or and so as a result they're turning to an agonist in this part. And I really like to look at the interaction between what we've traditionally called our sex hormones, which we know have neuro implications and others, but things like testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, and our weight health hormones. So they are like it's an ecosystem. They're interdependent. They're integrally related. They're symbiotic in nature. And so when your sex hormones shift, they throw your digestion off course. Like that's a part of their behavior. That's both intentional and also an outcome. And so as when we're seeing a decline in those hormones, either just because of aging and a decline and a decision of the body that it doesn't need them, or there's something that's going on that's suppressing them or is challenging their production, we then see part and parcel with that is we see the exacerbated or an initiation of dysfunction in our weight health hormones. So your belly fat or your inability to make muscle or bone loss. And I don't think bone loss gets given enough attention in the conversation. That's going to be really important for us to look at, in that way. I think that you asked about cortisol and sort of our body's stress hormone response, I would say is the third, if we have a stool with three legs, it's going to be all three of those. And if any of those are suboptimally, if they're out of balance as a result of suboptimal or frank dysfunction, it's going to play out with the other
Hormones
ones as well.
interconnected. Absolutely, yes. You hear this all the time. I'm stress
Yeah.
eating. The food makes me feel better. And it's not like we're reaching for the broccoli.
Mhm.
So how do you coach or
Mhm.
intervene when someone is suggestive of that?
Yeah. Well, better not perfect. So number one, the fact of the matter is a lot of the man-made food that we are consuming today does make us feel better. It just makes us feel better in the moment. It has been manipulated and designed to go into our brain and override satiety, or to give us sugar and a variety of, and certainly higher amounts of sugar, does make us, it's excitatory. It does make us, feel better in that moment. Coffee, caffeine, stimulant, it does give us quote unquote energy, to go ahead and do something. So I want to acknowledge somebody's experience with that. And we'll talk about it usually that, hey, there's a Band-Aid that's going on here. And like, I get that because I've Band-Aided my body for, decades in terms of that. The problem is that when with the Band-Aid, what's going on underneath is festering. And then at a certain point in time, the Band-Aid doesn't work, right? So like a common example is I need alcohol at night to take the stress off. Like I hear, I hear that all the time, right? And I'm like, okay. But when we actually look at what the alcohol is doing for you, it is actually longer term contributing to more of your stressors. So for someone who's trying to eat right and exercise and is still gaining weight, what's the role of the alcohol there? For somebody who then has suboptimal sleep or has immune or autoimmune issues, it's exacerbating those challenges. And so the conversation that I'll have is, so if we recognize that that is kind of like washing your floor with dirty shoes, like you're just never going to get the clean floor. So if we go in there, what I'm not going to do is come in and just be like, get rid of it. And that's what everybody does. In January, we do dry January, right? What does that solve for? If we use dry January to identify what are new ways of coping with our stress, and we now replace them with alcohol, so that come February, we're in drier February, or, we're in, like a dry light February, or whatever, but we've reduced our alcohol consumption and we found new coping mechanisms, or even it gave us aha moments to understand why we're experiencing elevated stress or a reduction of joy, and something negatively impacted our joy, and we're able to work on those, amazing. Then we're going to find new solutions. We're going to be able to do that. But most of the time what happens is we go through this cycle of doing it or not doing it. So I have patients who have consistently cycled through eating sugar, not eating sugar, drinking alcohol, not drinking alcohol, eating animal proteins, not eating animal, like on and on that part. And usually I can just ask the question, are you tired of that cycle? Like, you're paying me money. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you're here. Like, I think, there's a reason that you're here. And so what we will do in that space is we will look at what can we experiment with. I am not sitting here as somebody who is so sage because I have you come to me and I have a crystal ball and I know exactly what the right answer is for you. I am someone who has a lot of experience with strategies and recommendations, and I'm going to give us a couple of experiments. We're going to do those experiments and we're going to see what's doable, and we're going to see what actually moves the needle for you and your body. So what might move the needle for you and your body might be that using a GLP-1 agonist is helping a lot of my patients address their challenges with alcohol. Like, it is happening all the time, where they're kind of getting to a place like on their own now where they're like, I realized I was using alcohol. I wasn't like, oh, like I could say maybe I was enjoying it here or there, but I was using it for this reason, right? In the same way, I might be using caffeine for this reason. And what does that look like? And we're able to work on that. Something else that could happen is, as an example, I have a client that was eating blueberries. One of my patients, she was eating blueberries every night after dinner. And she's like, blueberries, like, they're okay. Like, sometimes of the year they're delicious, sometimes they're not. I had her do the delicious to me test, and she was scoring like somewhere about a 4 out of 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, a 4 or 5 with the blueberries most of the time. On occasion, she'd have like a 7 or 8. But what we found was they weren't delicious to her. So what they actually weren't doing was they weren't telling the body to be satisfied and to be enjoyed from that. And she said most of the time she was eating the blueberries. Everyone else in her house was having some version of a dessert. But she was doing it as a way to be healthy because it was lower in sugar and it was better for her. And her doctor or previous dietitian or somebody had said, this is a good choice. And I was like, that's a really crappy choice for you. Like, so first of all, I love blueberries. And if you like blueberries, like, let's go ahead and if they're delicious, great. But if they're not delicious, and we kind of MacGyvered up this like chocolate, like a hot cocoa version of something that she has at night that gives her some magnesium and, et cetera. And she really enjoys it. And, she'll sip on that. And then she also was finding that what was really the issue was she was exhausted and not really wanting to show up for anyone, not for her dog, not for her partner, not for her kids. And, For anyone who's a parent, I'm an aunt and a dog owner. And those night times, like sometimes I'm looking at my watch, like 5:45 if I've got the kids, and I'm like, how can we be in bed by 6:15? I'm like, how do I just end it? Like the next 2 hours are going to be so rough, right? And she was finding that she was really like turning to, it would start with the berries and then it would turn into like an hour and a half later, she was either having alcohol or she was having something to eat because she was just like miserable. So what we found was she was backloading on calories, like, and everybody had told her, just stop that. Like that had been the answer. Like, let's just stop that. Just stop that is never a human, like that's just not what somebody's going to action off of, ongoing. So when we were ultimately able to identify that on the nights where she wanted her like chocolate, or hot cocoa, that worked well. We also had times where she would have a dessert in the middle of the afternoon and it was nutrient balanced and she really enjoyed it. And that like kind of gave her something sweet and delicious, and she loved it. And then she also found that 90% of the time, the berries were like just added calories at that point. She was just having them to have something. And so we didn't have that. And she loved a magnesium bath. And her favorite part about the magnesium bath is when the door is closed and she was in her bath, nobody was allowed to come in there. Her dog didn't come in, her partner didn't come in, and the kids didn't come in. And that 30 minutes allowed her to then pivot over and be the person that she wanted to be for all of them before going to bed and sleeping better. So when we say how, it's a process of experimentation. Like I could not have come to, I didn't, wave a wand and say like magnesium bath, no berries, eat chocolate. Like we figure that out per person. But I think there are some key things in there. We did the delicious to me test. I asked the question, like, why are you having berries? Like a lot of people were high-fiving her and giving her credit for having berries after dinner, right? So I think in that regard, like we have to start to unpack that piece and get into how do we personalize, what's going
Elaborate.
to work
What
better
is
for you on
exactly
that
the
part.
delicious or me test for you?
Yeah, delicious to me. I call it the delicious, better be delicious to me right now test. So what you do is you create your own scale on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is it's the worst thing you've ever put in your mouth. Hopefully you never have to have that again. And a 10 is like so delicious, I could write a sonnet about it. So for me, I always come back to gnocchi, sardines, and stracciatella gelato that I had in Venice. Like could have had it again and again and again. And I did. Like I was like, and I'm lactose intolerant. And like, I was like, great, like it'll just go through me and then I'll have it again. Like I was like, this is great. Like I love it. So that like I measure like, and I remember the specific, like it's just like, there's a feeling of, I remember how delicious that was. So you go through and you have a bite or a sip, whatever you're eating or drinking, and you stop and you ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where is it? And if it's a 7 or greater, then it deserves it's worthy. Like it's worthy on that part. If it's a 4, 5, or 6, proceed with caution. The proceed with caution is that you are going to eat, but you are likely to not hit the satisfaction point, especially with the amount that's going to be better for you. That leads to looking for something else, like at the end of the meal on that part, or looking for something else another hour or two later, or just existing in a sub satisfied, state on that part. And then if it's a 1, 2, or 3, like I'm hoping that there's another option or there's a way, to make it more enjoyable. And it doesn't mean that just because it's delicious, I always get this pushback, just because it's delicious means like proceed and like have as much of it. And you don't have to pay attention to any other pillars of nutrition. That's not the case. The argument that I'm making here is deliciousness needs to be a part of your better nutrition decision making. But somebody said to me, well, if that was the case, I would just be eating ice cream all the time. And I said, I don't think you would. If I told you right now to take a pint of your favorite ice cream and start with a spoon, and after every spoonful that you ate, do the better be delicious to me test, I can tell you, I've done this. I've done it myself. I've done it with enough clients. By about spoonful number 5, 6, 7, depending on how quickly you're eating, it goes under a 7. You're now in the mode of just eating, right? And you're not having it be that delicious. Same with the French fries. The best French fries ever, wherever you're eating, if you take them home to keep eating, they're going to get warm. They're not going to be crispy. Like they're not going to be a 7. So it does actually help us. And, I originally created this quiz to help people through the holidays because I was just finding that so many of my clients would say to me like, meh, like what I'm having is like, I was like, we gain holiday weight over the 4, 5s, and 6s, So if there's candy that's around, if there's a piece of candy that's truly delicious to you, I love Good and Plenty's. There is not a redeeming quality in them at all. but they're delicious when I want them. If I try to eat my way through like good for you candy, like it's a waste. I'm still going to come back to wanting the good and plenties. If I have a couple of good and plenties, even a small container of good and plenties, whatever, then I'm done with it. Like I had that was that experience and I can move on from it. And I think that we're trying again to pretend that our body is designed with this willpower muscle that we really have to strengthen, when in fact, the body is actually designed with a satiety mechanism, beginning with weight health hormones that have receptor sites in our brain. And the job of those weight health hormones is to tell other hormones to go to work that tell the brain that tell the body that it's full, and also that tell the body that it should be satisfied. So let's actually work with our body's biology is always
But we don't live
my
in
MO on
conjunction
that
with
part.
our evolutionary biology. It's this broken, it's
That's
incongruent. And so everything, there's so many directions I want to
yeah.
go there. But for the first, in terms of your blueberry gal, I mean, right away, I think of anyone that's craving sugars. Again, I am biased because my patients come to me, usually there's GI issues. There's a whole slew of issues, but my focus has been kind of all things
Mhm,
GI, microbial medicine for the past decade. I do a lot
mhm,
of in-depth testing with looking at microbiome analysis, and the bacteria again that feed on sugar is not the same as perhaps some other bitter foods that could be better for us. And the emotional component, and when
mhm,
you said, she's just eating blueberries, is certainly interesting because what you have underscored, your philosophy is intent, helping someone understand why they are doing what they're doing. So your delicious test is interesting because after 7 bites, all of a sudden there's probably an exponential depreciation of kind of how something is affecting you. We don't
yes.
think in terms of that anymore. We're just putting food in our faces because we know we have to do that. It's society cues rather than our own internal hunger cues. And most of us are probably not even that hungry.
Mhm,
It's just, well, it's lunch hour, so we're all going out to
mhm,
lunch. And what's on the menu? Well, whatever else my peers are doing. We've lost this kind of innate nature to discern what is my body telling me. So if someone craves chocolate, to me, I think, okay, there's probably a magnesium deficiency, which is what I want to underscore maybe next in terms of nutritional
mm,
insufficiencies you find and foundationally where you start with patients. But in general, to me, the bacteria is really kind of what dictates a lot of the signals that we ignore. And the bacteria that feed on sugar or the yeast overgrowth or some of the bad players like maybe Klebsiella or some more proteobacteria or bifidobacteria, ideally better still. But needless to say is there's also bacteria that have a higher propensity to promote weight gain. And so we have to understand this interplay, I think, as well, that's
mhm,
often overlooked just on a very microbial level and how that's affecting now decision making, because
mhm,
I do not believe in willpower. If it's there, we're going to do it. Right. The question is just what
mhm.
environment, again, have we
Yes.
set up that's promoting success or unfortunately setting us up for failure, and definitely incongruent with our innate biology. In terms of the micronutrient insufficiencies, is there like a foundational where you suggest, okay, here's my foundational five, if you are, that we see across the board, this is the problem in our modern society?
Mhm. Yeah. I would say no in terms of, I think micronutrients is a big problem. We, for a variety of different reasons, whether it's food processing, food choice, soil quality, all sorts of different things, and also exponential needs. I think one of the things that I invite people to do and break up with a lot of stuff in my book, I'm like, you're going to lose weight right off the bat with my book, because the first actual chapter after we go through stories is shit to unlearn. So I'm like, all right, like there's a lot that we got to like just jump in there. And when you unlearn that, you're like, oh, wow. Like, I mean, it's hard. Like, it can be really hard because we love to glom on to like total calories in the day matter, total amount of water matters, total cholesterol tells us about our health, total, blood, our A1C tells us what our blood sugar risk is. Like, we got to break up with these. So, when we look at that, I would be flawed if I said then like, oh, this micronutrient, right? But we do have to recognize that micronutrients, like our body is an operating system. Like we like to think about it in all of these different ways and deviate away from a conversation where it really is an operating system that needs to be optimally resourced. We've had really dumb amounts, those are the RDAs, and they moved them to DRIs that were like these like levels that they set at like across the country for like women and men. Like an example, in like 1997 is still the dietary recommended intake for magnesium is still from 1997. And it's for a 135-pound woman and a 166-pound man. I haven't weighed 135. I will never weigh 135. Like I hope in my life, because, I'm strong and I'm like, whatever, but I've definitely weighed more than that most of my adult life. And like, so that number has never been right for me. And then it also dictates, it says based on that weight number, that men have a 20% higher need for magnesium. And when we look at what magnesium does in the human body, including in times of stress and physiologic stress and cramping, relaxing our muscles, like, men don't have monthly menstrual cramps, and I was like, so women like we just need that, on that part. So I'm not saying women need more than men or men need more than women. I'm just saying it's dumb. Like the amounts that we have set are dumb. And so, for me, what I will do is like when somebody comes in, the conversation is going to be like, first of all, I think like you, I've been doing this for a really long time. And when somebody tells me what they are taking in or they aren't taking in, or historically what they have and haven't gotten in, and we start to have some conversations about that, my spidey sense goes off and I'm like, oh, okay, like I think we might need to look at some of the nutrients, specific, like it might be that you're over dominant on calcium. Like you've been paying so much attention because of bone health to calcium and you haven't paid attention to magnesium or vitamin K, right? Like you might have been getting vitamin D in, but maybe if we're worried about arterial plaque, like we should be thinking about your calcium intake and your vitamin K because, you know, calcium loves to go rogue. It doesn't love to go to bone. It loves to go to arterial plaque and other places where it doesn't belong. So let's make sure that we have the nutrients to guide it and like kind of tell it where to go. And with blood sugar, I always come back to things like B vitamins and chromium because I almost always see people who are trying to optimize their blood sugar getting rid of carbohydrates. Well, like the sources of carbohydrate that are better for us are very micronutrient dense. And if you decide to never have carbohydrates, doesn't matter to me, but we still have to get those nutrients in. So where are you getting your B vitamins? Where are you getting your magnesium? Where are you getting things like silicon and boron? And I'm like super interested in lithium. I think small amount like lithium orotate I use, and I've seen it really help with B vitamin absorption. Well, look at what used to be in the soil together. Look at what we used to get from our carbohydrates. So I think it's really important, for us to hone in on those micronutrients and that space of nutrient optimization as opposed to sort of nutrient sufficiency, and certainly to move on from what have been insufficient levels.
We just scratched the surface on bone degradation, bone loss, calcium. I think that to me was a huge problem. To me, it's usually not insufficient calcium. It's a balance between magnesium, potassium, sodium ratios, and then calcium plays a role. But just taking exogenous calcium all the time to theoretically rebuild bone to me is a disservice more often than not. I mean, bone.
We're going to have to do a part 2 on bone, right? Like just a whole, let's do that. Cause there's a lot.
We have to do part
that
2 on, because I have 32 more questions and now your time is up. So this has been absolutely remarkable. I love everything that you shared. I love the to me, I call it progress over perfection. So it's similar when, in terms of your t-shirt that you're wearing or your sweater. So I love it. This has been absolutely inspirational. Like we're definitely doing a part 2 in the year. I want to plug your book because let's highlight that too in the new year as well. So anything you kind of want to wrap up with our listeners?
I'm just really excited for everybody to have this resource. The book delivers the first ever weight health hormone assessment. It's not a lab test, spoiler alert. It is a 5-stage process that we have to assess a variety of different things. But I hope that between that and also the online resources and access to our coaches, that you will feel that you have the support to actually evaluate, to assess your own body, whether you're working with your own clinician or whether you need to identify one. And there is like never a better time because this really allows you to use your resources more efficiently. For me, I know everybody is focused on budget. I think that is an important thing for us to, and obviously like I understand all of the challenges around our finances, but I also look at our time is so precious as a resource. And then I also feel like hope is so precious. I mean, it really was the thing for me that when I lost hope, I was on the path to becoming a person that I didn't want to be. So, if anyone feels that they're at that place, this is, I hope, an opportunity for you to get a renewed sense of, hey, my body is actually brilliant, unique, and now I just need to tap into what it is trying to tell me and be able to optimize
I
from
love
there. So thank
speaking
you
with
for this
individuals who
opportunity.
focus on natural medicine, lifestyle medicine. You're brilliant. Thank you again. Tell your gal also blueberries don't grow all year round, by the way. Now, also, last final question
That's
I end
right.
up every episode. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I have a superpower, and my superpower is that I'm what I call a better mirror. And so when I see people, I shine back on them, their potential, their value. And, I see the best in people. So I really believe that that is my superpower. And it's just very fun to be able to use it in this
Be
life
the
for
change you want to
the
see in the
time that I'm
world.
given.
This has been incredible. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the TBD Fit show here. Stay healthy, stay consistent, and stay curious. So, Ashley, definitely around two. Where can people find you?
I'm at Ashley Koff everywhere and at the better.
For the cliffhanger for the next one, we got 32 more questions to discuss. You're awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to the TBD Fit Podcast on Dr. Talks, where we unpack all things health and longevity. If you enjoy the show, like, review, and subscribe. This allows us to have a greater reach and help others on their health and wellness journey.